YouTube. In my last video, I installed 4 different operation systems on the Oracle VirtualBox. I walked through the installation of freebsd and openbsd, log into their shell console, and what's left is configure users, networks, whatever. So those like bare bone Unix, you need to manually configure. But the Ubuntu is a full-fledged desktop. It includes browsers, applications, user management, all sorts of goodies like the Microsoft Windows, but for free. Okay, the ISO image I already downloaded from this URL, and this time let's load that ISO and get the desktop configured. So let's go to the settings, Ubuntu storage. Let's add a new choose disk. Okay, Ubuntu. Double click, and we have this as a primary master, and let's start it. One thing, when it is loading, let's check the the settings is not available. Okay, let's check the settings. Here the storage, we have Ubuntu. Virtual size is 8 GB. This might not be enough to install a desktop. For Unix, it's totally fine, but for desktop, 8 GB might not be enough. We will change it later. And let's check it's still loading. Check the system. I assigned 1 GB memory, and processor, give it 1 CPU. I have totally 2 CPUs, and it can be given 4 CPU. In that case, 2 CPU is virtual one simulated, and virtual machine pretends there's more CPU than the hardware, and trying to do the multi-threading, which won't be able to help. Let's close this. Go to try Ubuntu. Okay. So here the system, we checked the processor. Okay, let's get back here. As you see, first let's check the browser. We didn't configure the network. The Ubuntu installation wizard already configured them at the backend. So this is advantage of using a desktop operation system. Okay, desktop Ubuntu. You see, it's for convenient. It's not just for the like jigs. It's for convenient everyday use. You don't have to worry about network. It's already did those configuration for you. Let's close this. Close the browser. And there's convenient softwares, common software like Office. Okay, and this Impress software and Amazon. So a lot of things. This Office goodie. You can save it. Just, no. New text document. I can do all sorts of things. Let me save as whatever. I don't want to save it. Just to show you, there's reasonable software by default. And let's check the configuration. here we have the GUI, and we can configure network. We can configure users, add accounts, remove accounts. So that's XYZ code. Okay, add, close it. So looks like we like the operation system. So let's install it. Double click the install Ubuntu. But it says let's click continue, follow the wizard. So it's complaining you need at least 8.6 gigabyte. But I don't have enough memories, as I showed you here. Settings, we didn't assign enough storage. It's only have 8 gigabytes. So we need to give it a better machine. So let's just quit. And let's close this. Power off. Applications. So let's delete this and create a bigger one. You're bound to remove delete all files. Delete all files. New Ubuntu. Okay, continue. Cannot create. Already exists and possibly belong to another machine. Okay, copy. Okay, that's Ubuntu 2. It's already have one. And the memory is okay. Create a virtual hard disk. Image, continue. Dynamically allocate it. Give it a more memory. 14 disk space. 14 G is good enough. Let's create. And settings. Storage, add, choose disk. Okay, Ubuntu. Okay. Let's have it started. It take a while. Just make sure that one Oracle VirtualBox can host multiple operation systems simultaneously. So even though I'm running Ubuntu, nothing prevents me to run freebsd. So they can run in parallel at the same time. See, I got two operation systems. This one is freebsd, and this one is Ubuntu. Like last time, let's install the Ubuntu. You see, cancel, double click. Of course, if you run multiple operation systems at the same time, both of them is running slow. What happens is you only have that much hardware resource. They share the memory, hard disk, and the CPU. And the virtual machine is trying to multi-threading between different operation systems. download updates while installing Ubuntu. Store third party for Wi-Fi, hardware refresh, download, save time after installation. Continue. Here is disk and store Ubuntu. Okay, install now. Write changes to disks. Continue. Just follow the wizard. Detect keyboard layout. Oh. Is this large enough? Yeah, make this larger. Okay, continue. Your name XYZ. Computer name XYZ. Okay, XYZ code. Choose password. No, don't that long. Okay. Just continue. So, if we have multiple systems, let's see, each of them share the CPU. I have totally have 2 CPUs. If I have 2 operating systems running, and my hosted system is a Mac. At the same time, you see the openbsd is running, and also Ubuntu is running. They all share the 2 CPUs. So the virtual machine have to share the hardware CPU to 3 operation systems. So sometimes Ubuntu get it, sometimes freebsd get it, sometimes always my Mac get the CPU cycles because it's running the virtual machine. Still installing. All those operation systems, they also share the same motherboard. They share the display, which is a main display of my Mac. So when I open that window, my hardware display is showing this window. Also, my hardware display is showing this, but they are sharing the same hardware display. The virtual machine share the same hardware between different operation systems. The storage, okay. They have the virtual storage, which is not a real storage. They are hosted on my Mac, on my Mac's hardware. Of course, they share the audio, the network of my network card. I have only one network card, but they are sharing between different operation systems. They have ports, standard shares. So one hardware, 5 operation system, and 4 located inside my VirtualBox, which can be run in parallel. That's the advantage of a virtual machine. Of course, in this case, the virtual machine have to work hard because there could have conflict. What happens if my Mac and your Ubuntu and FreeBSD are trying to access a network card? In that case, VirtualBox have to manage. They need to do handle the system request. Make sure at this point So each operating system gets their fair share of the CPU, gets a network card. When they are trying to share the memory, some operating systems have to be paged out. And so the virtual machine need to schedule all those things. Of course, if you are trying to close, it allow you to save the machine state. So why we call it the virtual machine, because the operation system state, uh, the all of the state is saved. So all the state variables are captured and saved. Next time when it start up, it start at exactly the same state as they shut down. Let's shut down the freebsd. At this side, it's already. Oh, it's haven't. Still installing. Takes time. And you may wonder what the difference between the virtual machine and hardware. Yeah, the difference is obvious. One hardware have one operation system. The operating system manage your hardware. And in the scenario of VirtualBox, my hardware is managed by my Mac OS. So the Mac OS is my host operation system. On that Mac OS, I install the VirtualBox, which is a software. Inside this software, I run 4 different operation systems. Those are called a guest operation system. They are not. They are different from my Mac operating system. Everything those guest operating system has is managed by my Mac eventually. They have to access the network, access hardware resources through my Mac OS. And they access operating system resource. They access the resource through the virtual machine. Virtual machine is like a broker sitting between the guest operating system and the host operating system, which is my Mac. And through the virtual machine, those guest system share the hard disk, share the memory, share the CPU, share the network card, what's not. So one more thing we need to mention is about the processor. What happened if I assign 4 CPUs to this operating system where I have only 2? What happens is if you have a multi-threading program, each thread could run on a dedicated CPU. They don't have to do the content shift, and that saves time. If you have 4 CPUs, and some program may decide how many threads they need to run based on the available CPUs. Since you assign 4 CPU, the program will see from the system, from the operation system, they have 4 CPU, and instead 2 threads. They spawn 4 threads, and but actually you only have 2 CPUs, and so at least 2 threads running on the same CPU at a time. And in that case, the virtual machine needs to work harder to schedule them, do the content shift, which make your program even slower with multi-threading. You don't want to assign more CPU than you actually have. That kind of cheating didn't gain you performance. It's just slow down. The reason your program can run faster is because when there is CPU idle, a thread can occupy the CPU. the idle CPU. Okay. The same apply to the other things. They are sharing, but to each operation system, they store the whole hardware is exclusively owned by itself. The other operation system is invisible to them, so the Ubuntu won't even know the other operation system is running parallel. FreeBSD, OpenBSD, CentOS pretend they are not exist, and of course the Ubuntu 2 will not even know the host system. And all the other operation system are invisible to them, so it's kind of a philosophy. It's they share the world, but to themselves, it just the world is just owned by themselves, as if they are owned by themselves, but actually they are virtually owned by them. The hardware, the resources are shared. It's not exclusively owned, even though it appears to them it's exclusively owned system. And because of the sharing, everything runs slower than real hardware because there's overhead. If you have two CPU, of course, other operating system also sees two CPU, and the virtual machine have to share the CPU, and each one get a time slot, and run slower. So your 2 gigahertz CPU like degrade to 1 gigahertz to a particular operation system. It could even slower because there's overhead of the shifting from the virtual machine. Also, you are trying to assign the memory. You have a fast memory like 4 gigabyte, but actually because of the sharing, your memory will appear to be slower. Okay, continue testing. Restart now. It appear to be slower because your virtual machine have to swamp out your memory and page it so that the other operation system can use it. So to the guest system, it appears they have the whole machine, but what they actually get is a slice of the hardware. Okay. The performance degrade. However, you get the benefit of running multiple operation systems at the same hardware at the same time. That's a trade-off. Imagine you have the Mac and you want to uh, run some games only work on the Windows. You have a Windows there and play the game. Some game running on the old Mac operation system, old version, so you can have the old version installed and still be able to run those games. Of course, you can have a virtual machine and pretend they are in different networks. You can try out the network with virtual machines. What I'm not mentioning is the virtual machine technology already looks old. There are other technologies in the horizon. Did I? Um, okay. Have it down. Yeah. Now we have finished the install the Ubuntu desktop. Let's check the network. That's the first time start, so it's a little bit slow. Come on. Okay. The performance is not very exciting, but let's check. I should have the network already configured. Like automatically configured. Yes, that's it. And our favorite tool. Let's go to system settings.